Have you ever wondered why the ancient Greeks were so good at fighting? How did they, a collection of small city-states, manage to dominate battles and defeat larger, stronger enemies? What made their warriors so powerful, their strategy so effective, and their armies so feared? This is not just about brute strength. The Greeks weren't the biggest or the strongest people in the ancient world, yet they crushed powerful enemies like the Persians and held their ground for centuries. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why the Greeks were superior in warfare. You'll learn about their advanced battle tactics, their incredible discipline, their powerful weapons, and how their way of life shaped them into some of the greatest fighters in history. Stick around, because what you're about to discover might change how you see ancient warfare forever. Now, let's get into it. 1. The phalanx formation, a game-changer in warfare. One of the biggest reasons the Greeks were better at fighting was their famous phalanx formation. This was a tight, organized battle formation where soldiers, known as hoplites, stood shoulder to shoulder, creating a nearly impenetrable wall of shields and spears. Most ancient armies fought in loose, chaotic groups, but the Greeks turned battle into a system, almost like a machine. In a phalanx, every man depended on the one next to him. If one soldier broke formation, the whole unit could fall apart. This forced incredible discipline. Why was this formation so effective? Protection. Soldiers had their shields covering not just themselves, but also their fellow warriors, making them harder to kill. Deadly attack. They used long spears, called daru, which let them stab enemies before they could get close. Unity. They moved as one, making it almost impossible for enemies to break through. This wasn't just a random tactic. It was a revolution in warfare. Even when the Greeks were outnumbered, they could hold the line and win battles simply by staying disciplined and sticking to their formation. 2. The hoplite, the perfect warrior. Greek warriors, or hoplites, were not just random men forced into battle. They were trained, organized, and heavily armed. The average hoplite was a citizen soldier, meaning he wasn't a professional warrior but was trained and ready to fight when needed. Each hoplite carried a large bronze shield, aspes/hoplon. Their main protection, and it played a big role in the phalanx, a long spear daru. Their primary weapon, designed to keep enemies at a distance. A short sword xiphos, for close combat when the spear was no longer useful. A bronze helmet, chest armor, and greaves, making them well protected from head to toe. The armor and weapons made the hoplite tough to kill, but what made them truly dangerous was their training and mindset. They didn't just fight as individuals. They fought as a unit, something that gave them a massive advantage over enemy forces who often lacked coordination. 3. Greek discipline and training. Many ancient armies relied on numbers to win, but the Greeks relied on discipline and training. From a young age, Greek boys were trained in physical fitness, combat, and endurance. The most extreme example was in Sparta, where boys were taken from their families at age 7 and put into military training camps called the agoge. They were trained to fight, endure pain, survive with little food, and obey orders without question. By the time they were adults, they were elite warriors, far superior to most soldiers in the ancient world. But even in other Greek city-states, training was serious. Hoplites trained regularly to stay strong and coordinated. This meant that when battle came, they knew exactly what to do and didn't panic under pressure. 4. The Greek mindset, fighting for freedom. The Greeks had something their enemies often didn't: a reason to fight. Most ancient armies were made up of slaves or conscripts forced into battle. But Greek soldiers were free citizens fighting for their home, their family, and their way of life. This made them fight harder because they weren't just obeying orders. They were defending everything they loved. When soldiers believe in their cause, they fight with more courage and determination. This helped them stand their ground even when outnumbered. One of the best examples is the Battle of Marathon for 90 BC. The Athenians were heavily outnumbered by the Persian army, yet they fought with incredible bravery and won against all odds. Their discipline and unity, combined with their belief in their cause, gave them the edge they needed. 5. Superior Greek strategy and leadership. Greek generals were some of the smartest military minds in history. They didn't just rush into battle blindly. They planned every move carefully. Some key strategies included using terrain to their advantage. Greeks often fought in narrow spaces where enemy numbers didn't matter as much. Flanking. Instead of charging straight ahead, they attacked enemies from the sides, breaking their formation. Surprise attacks. They didn't always wait for the enemy to come to them. They struck first when it was least expected. One of the greatest military leaders was Alexander the Great, who used Greek warfare tactics to conquer the largest empire in history. He combined the phalanx with fast-moving cavalry and brilliant strategies to outmaneuver enemies. His ability to adapt and think ahead made his army nearly unbeatable. 6. Greek naval power dominating the seas. It wasn't just on land that the Greeks were superior fighters. They also ruled the seas. Their navy, especially the Athenian fleet, was one of the most powerful in the ancient world. Their secret weapon? The trireme. A trireme was a fast, agile warship with 3 rows of oarsmen. It could ram enemy ships, sink them, or outmaneuver them in battle. The Greeks used their naval strength to defeat the Persians in the famous Battle of Salamis for 80 BC, where their smaller, faster ships crushed the much larger Persian fleet. Greek control of the seas allowed them to transport troops quickly, attack enemy coasts, and defend their cities from invasion. 7. Greek influence on future warfare. The Greek way of fighting didn't just win battles. It shaped warfare for centuries. The phalanx formation was copied by the Romans, who later improved on it and built the most powerful empire in history. Greek ideas on strategy, training, and discipline influenced military leaders for generations. Even today, many principles of Greek warfare, like working as a unit, strategic planning, and discipline, are still used in modern military tactics. Why the Greeks were unmatched in warfare. When we look back at history, it's clear that the Greeks weren't just good at fighting, they were exceptional. Their military dominance didn't come from having the biggest armies or the strongest warriors. Instead, it came from their discipline, strategy, and mindset, which set them apart from other civilizations. At the heart of Greek military power was the phalanx formation. This was more than just a tactic. It was a complete shift in how battles were fought. Most ancient armies relied on individual heroism or sheer numbers, but the Greeks turned warfare into a team effort. The phalanx worked because every soldier had to trust the man beside him. One weak link could break the entire line. So Greek warriors were trained to stand firm, never retreat, and fight as one. The power of the phalanx wasn't just in its structure, but in what it represented: unity, discipline, and order. When facing an army of Greeks, enemies weren't just fighting a group of men. They were facing an unbreakable machine, one that moved, struck, and defended with perfect coordination. This kind of warfare required intense training, something that most other ancient armies lacked. Hoplites, the perfect warriors. Beyond their formations, Greek warriors, known as hoplites, were some of the best equipped and best trained soldiers of their time. Their armor and weapons made them incredibly tough to kill. Their large bronze shields provided excellent defense. Their long spears allowed them to attack from a safe distance, and their short swords were perfect for close combat. But what really made the hoplites dangerous was their discipline. Unlike the Persian armies, which relied on vast numbers of lightly armed troops, Greek hoplites were well-trained and heavily armored. They didn't break ranks or run when the battle got tough. They stood their ground, knowing that as long as they held formation, they could win. The Greek warrior mindset, fighting for more than just survival. Most ancient soldiers fought because they were forced to. Many were conscripts or slaves who had no real loyalty to their commanders or kings. But the Greeks were different. Greek warriors fought because they believed in their cause. They weren't just fighting for a king or a general. They were fighting for their home, their city, and their way of life. This made them far more motivated and fearless in battle. They weren't just trying to survive. They were defending everything they held dear. This was especially true in battles like Marathon and Thermopylae, where Greek warriors stood their ground against overwhelming odds, proving that they would rather die than surrender their homeland to a foreign invader. This kind of mental strength made a huge difference. When soldiers believe in their fight, they push through exhaustion, fear, and pain. They become harder to break. And that's exactly what made the Greeks so deadly in battle. Greek military strategy, outsmarting their enemies. The Greeks weren't just physically tough. They were also brilliant strategists. While many ancient armies relied on brute force, Greek generals used planning and tactics to outmaneuver their enemies. One of the best examples of this is the Battle of Marathon for 90 BC. The Athenians were outnumbered by the Persians, but instead of waiting to be surrounded, they attacked first in a well-coordinated assault. They struck hard and fast, catching the Persians off guard and winning a decisive victory. Another example is the Battle of Thermopylae for 80 BC, where King Leonidas and his 300 Spartans, along with a few thousand other Greeks, held off the massive Persian army in a narrow mountain pass. They used the terrain to their advantage, forcing the Persians to fight in small numbers, which eliminated the enemy's numerical advantage. Then there was Alexander the Great, who took Greek warfare to the next level. His ability to combine the phalanx with cavalry attacks made his army nearly unstoppable. He didn't just beat his enemies, he crushed them with superior strategy, leaving them with no chance to regroup or counterattack. Greek naval power, controlling the seas. The Greeks didn't just dominate on land. They were also masters of naval warfare. The Athenian navy, in particular, was one of the most powerful in the ancient world. Their secret weapon was a trireme, a fast and agile warship that could ram and sink enemy vessels. One of the greatest naval victories in history was the Battle of Salamis for 80 BC, where the smaller, faster Greek ships destroyed the much larger Persian fleet. This battle changed the course of history, proving that skill and strategy could defeat overwhelming numbers. Controlling the seas gave the Greeks another huge advantage: mobility. They could move troops quickly, launch surprise attacks, and defend their coastlines from invasion. No other ancient civilization could match their combined land and sea dominance. Greek influence on future warfare. The Greek way of war didn't just win battles, it changed the world. The phalanx formation was later adopted and improved by the Romans, who built an even bigger empire using the same principles of discipline, training, and unit coordination. Even today, many Greek military tactics are still studied in modern warfare. The importance of teamwork, discipline, and strategy is something that armies continue to use. The Greeks didn't just fight well, they set the standard for how battles should be won. So, what made the Greeks so much better at fighting? They fought smarter, not harder, using superior tactics, terrain, and strategy. They had the phalanx, an almost unbreakable formation that made them incredibly hard to defeat. Their hoplites were well-armed, well-trained, and highly disciplined. They fought for freedom, not just survival, making them far more motivated than most ancient armies. Their navy dominated the seas, giving them a major advantage over enemies who relied only on land forces. Their generals were some of the greatest military minds in history, constantly adapting and outsmarting their opponents. All of this combined made the Greeks one of the most powerful military forces in history. They didn't just win wars, they changed warfare forever. And that's why, even thousands of years later, we still talk about the way the Greeks fought. They proved that discipline, strategy, and unity are more powerful than sheer numbers or brute force. If you enjoyed this deep dive into Greek warfare, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss out on our next historical breakdown. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.